Hi, I'm Marcia Lehman, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. Today, we'll be pruning a smoke bush. Now, you have several choices to make. One is to decide early on if you're going to grow this as a large shrub or as a small multi-trunked tree. And when we move in to start pruning, you will understand why I'm choosing to treat this like a small multi-trunked tree. It's grown enough that it's too late to do it as a single stem. One of the other comments I would make is the smoke bush is in the same family as poison ivy. Now, it's dormant, so there's not going to be a lot of sap bleeding out, but you definitely want to wear your protective gear. I've got my gloves on today. You're going to want to clean all your tools. I've already sanitized before we start, but you'll want to clean them afterwards in case there's any sap or leftover residue after pruning, and you certainly don't want to get a case of contact dermatitis the next time you go to prune and wonder where you got it. So just know, smoke bush is in the same family as poison ivy, so beware of contact dermatitis. Generally, smoke bush needs very little pruning. You really go in and clean up the 4Ds, and if you're growing it as a shrub, you take out a few stems each year, no more than 1/3, and you take them off as low as possible. And again, that's just thinning out for airflow and sunshine. We have, as you'll soon see, the situation of treating it as a small multi-trunked tree, and you'll also see that it has been pruned in the past in a way that caused it to put out a bunch of what looks like water sprouts. So we will actually have a little bit more cleanup to do here than typical. So let me first show you why I say we're going to treat this like a small multi-trunk tree. When you look at the base, you see a great big stem here in the front. There's a second one in the back that comes up this side, and both of those then branch within 12 inches, and so we've got the structure that's more like a multi-trunked small tree. So that's what we're going to do. To get started, I just need to create some space to work, so I'm going to take off a few of these low-hanging branches so I stop getting whacked in the face, especially the ones that want to grow down. Growing out is not all bad, but growing down is not good. So we'll take off some of these and create a little space for me to work. And then I'll stop getting whacked in the face, but you'll also notice I'm wearing my safety glasses. And now I'm up to some things that are smaller, so hand pruners will work just as well. Clean that up a little bit. So then let me pick on this branch. This is one of our main stems, and it comes up, and then we come out here, and you may or may not be able to see, but there used to be another branch here that was easily 3/4 of an inch in diameter, and this got cut at some time, which is what created all of this growth. So what I'm going to do is to take off the smallest of these and just thin them out. So there's 2. This one wants to grow down. There's 3. And this one comes back towards the house. I'll take that off. There's 4. And I've kept 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I took 4 out of 6. Now the same thing happens here. We come up and I can see that a cut was made here, and now we have what looks like a bunch of water sprouts, and they want to grow back in towards the center. And that's just not good for airflow and sunshine. And this may need to be repeated for the next couple of years until it recovers from having had these cuts made. In effect, this is kind of like what we see on crepe myrtles that we jokingly call crepe murder. But I'm going to take off all these little spindly ones and hope that they decide not to grow back. So again, We'll keep the biggest, strongest ones that are growing in the right direction and take off the ones that are not growing in the right direction. And then we've got this. Here you clearly can see where the cut was made. Wasn't as big a cut, but it's had the same effect on the growth of the shrub. Same here. That stub is actually a little long. Then we've got two little ones coming out there, one coming there. So I'm just going to come back here, take that off and keep that one. Horizontal branches on a smoke bush don't bother me, but the ones that droop down on the ground do. So now I've kind of cleaned this out a bit. And let me come around. I'm looking at this and I also see a bit of a scar there. So the question is, do I just want to take off this lower one, or do I want to take off, I think I want to take this off here. So that's a lopper. If I can get it in there. There we go. So that's out of there. And then this little spindly stuff coming out down here at the very, very bottom. You want to cut that as low as you can possibly go. And then, again, just working here in the back, here are a whole bunch of little, I mean, these things are probably not even 1/8 of an inch in diameter. That one's growing back into the center, so we'll take that off. Keep that for now. Let me stand up. We'll come up to this limb, which also had a cut in the past, which resulted in all this extra growth. So this is probably a more extensive pruning than smoke bush would normally get. So my advice to you is, don't ever commit crepe murder on a smoke bush, or you're going to end up with this much work to do. And it will take several years for it to fully recover from this and stop putting out this type of growth. So that's thinned out pretty nicely. Now we've got some conflict back here. This one's already scratching the house, so just take that off. We'll keep that. That's got the funky growth on it. That wants to cross and rub, so we'll take that off back here. Take off some little stuff growing off the bottom, and I think I'm ready to move on. So now the really big question on this smoke bush, as I try and move around here, is this front limb. Part of the reason, let me crawl it here, if you can zoom in on this end, you can see how it was pruned in the past. And it was pruned that way because it was growing out into the lawn and interfering with the person mowing the lawn. And so it's been cut back a couple of times, but it's been cut back and now we have this bad growth. So I actually am going to suggest that we take this whole thing off all the way back here. So I'm going to get a saw out, and you don't have to watch me make all that all those cuts, but you see what it looks like before. We'll shut off the camera and we'll show you what it looks like after. And for that, I'm going to be using my folding saw. I used the folding saw that I showed you, and we made the cut as low as possible. And I think you would agree that it's already opened it up and it looks a whole lot better already. Then the next question is what to do about this. And this is one that at the moment I'm going to leave and let the homeowner decide what to do with it. But I do have some dead material down here, which just breaks right off. So I can always take that. Then we're going to move on to the other side of this smoke bush. So we got some little stuff in here to clean up. Anything that wants to grow up towards the middle, Keep the focus on airflow and sunshine. And then I'm ready to stand back up and work on this. And again, this is going to be a repeat of what we did over in this section of the plant. So we're going to turn the camera off. I'm going to work on this. This is the before. Here's your after. But here's the before, and we'll come back and show you what this looks like after I've cleaned it up a bit. One last thing we want to show you is making those cuts where we then got that cluster of growth that kind of looked like water sprouts tends to give really, really long shoots. So if we start at the base of the plant where we got a nice thick couple of trunks and just pan up, you'll see how tall this is. Those shoots are that long because the growth was triggered by those prior pruning cuts. We did nothing today to reduce the height, but it's halfway up into the second story of the house. So it's a fairly tall smoke bush, but again, I think that's because of those earlier cuts that were made at about the 4-foot level that put out a cluster of growth that looks like water shoots. And as you look at those going up, they're pretty straight, pretty upright, and don't have a lot of branching on them. That may be something that we'll need to address in the future, but not something we're doing today. And I think you would agree that this is way more open and airy and doesn't have that funky cluster of growth like it had before we went to work on it. Again, I would say this is a little more serious pruning than normally done on a smoke bush, but it was because of the prior cuts that had been made and the excessive growth that had spawned. So if you don't make those type of pruning cuts, you won't have this much work to do when you come out next year to prune your smoke bush. So generally it's, clean up the 4Ds, and there was some of that. You could just take it and, kind of like the dead leaves, it just goes crunch. And then focus on a little bit of thinning for airflow and sunshine. We took out we made a couple cuts low. We took one out here. We took out a sizable one here at the bottom. And yes, we left this one for the homeowner to decide as the year progresses whether or not to keep that one. It goes out low and then comes back up and almost looks like a second shrub. So we'll let the homeowner make that call. But this has now been pruned out, and again, we've got a multi-trunked, small tree, smoke bush. Gets pruned while dormant. Be sure to wear your protective gear, because if you are allergic to poison ivy, as I am, this is in the same family as poison ivy, and you can get a case of contact dermatitis if you make skin contact with the sap. So wear your protective gear when working on smoke bush. That's it for today. Hope you learned something, and we thank you for joining us.